Hey guys, welcome back to my lifestyle channel. Today I'm going to be doing another cook with me video, and today we are making my homemade tomato soup. I did a chicken noodle soup, so if you haven't checked it out, go do that. It is completely homemade down to the egg noodles, and I had a lot of fun filming it, so I thought why not do another one. It's winter time, so I am kind of sticking to soups, but I hope my next one will be something different than soups. So for this recipe, I like to use Roma tomatoes. It's amazing with fresh tomatoes. I will put that out there. And during the summertime, if you do a garden yourself like I normally do, I will probably take you guys along with my garden coming up this spring. But I love doing Roma tomato plants, and then you can turn around and use those Roma tomatoes in this. But the hard part is you do kind of have to have a stockpile since this is a homemade tomato soup. I don't use any canned tomatoes or anything like that. I use all fresh tomatoes. So for this, I did just have to go to my local supermarket and get some tomatoes in the produce section. Unfortunately, it is really good if you can just get the tomatoes out of your garden. And for this recipe, I like cherry tomatoes and Roma tomatoes. So for the Roma tomatoes, they are the smaller, slender looking tomatoes. They're not as big as like a big beefy tomato, but they're definitely a lot bigger than a cherry tomato. For the cherry tomatoes, I take like a handful or two of those. Usually, if I have to buy them from the store, I will take half of the container that are usually like this big. I'll take half of the tomatoes out of that to use. For the Roma tomatoes, I use anywhere from 8 to 12 tomatoes. The more, the better, because like I said, you're making this completely from tomatoes. You're not using any canned tomatoes. So what I will do is go ahead and slice those up, and then the cherry tomatoes, I just slice in half, and then you'll want to roast them. So the first thing to do is to always preheat your oven. I preheat mine to 400. That's what I usually roast my veggies on. And then I use a baking sheet, a cookie sheet, whatever you have. You can lay some tinfoil down, and then I pretty much just go ahead and start putting the tomatoes across it. I also want to mention that when this video goes up, my blog will also go up for this. It has the ingredient list there, which would be super easy for you to screenshot, so I will put that down below for you to take with you when you go shopping for this recipe. And there's also like some basic instructions in case you need to go back and kind of remember certain steps, but this recipe is super easy. Like I said, you will need 8 to 12 Roma tomatoes, cherry tomatoes. Like I said, I just get like a little container if I can't get them straight out of my garden. And from there, you will need garlic. Again, like my last video, garlic is a preference. We love garlic in this house, so I use quite a bit. You will of course need salt and pepper, olive oil, and that's pretty much it for the base of your soup. So there is the little add-on stuff. So what I like to do with a lot of my light soups is to add onion to it. It just is so good, and it's also a good way to make in the skillet and add a little bit of chicken broth and flour to help when you put it into the mix with all the other liquefied soup. It'll kind of help it thicken up a little bit too. So that's why I really like to add onion as well. So for this recipe, I do use 2 Vidalia onions. And so of course for that, you will need a little bit of flour. I don't use that much. And chicken broth, vegetable stock, whatever you want to use, you can use that. If you just need to use some water, you can, but I do recommend chicken or vegetable broth because later on with your soup, you are going to put that in the soup as well. So just keep that in mind. For seasoning with this soup is pretty simple. I salt and pepper, and I add some basil. You can use oregano, Italian. Sometimes I'll throw in a little bit of my Italian seasoning, but not that much. I mainly just use basil. And the last thing is if you want your soup to be a little bit more creamy, you can add cream. You can use heavy cream, you can use half and half. I know some people like to even put like some lighter or thinner milks in theirs. I personally use half and half, so that's what I'm going to be doing later. And it's very optional on how much you use. I go sometimes a little bit heavier if I'm really wanting a creamy soup. And that is about it for it. So I want to go ahead and start breaking it down. So like I said earlier, we've already sliced up our tomatoes and we have them on a baking sheet. So from there, you're going to, I kind of smash my garlic and then I just slice it in half for this because we're going to be roasting it all. So I just sprinkle those halves all over my tomatoes, drizzle some olive oil, and you want to go ahead and throw them in the oven because they need to roast for about 45 minutes. While they are roasting, this is a really good time to go ahead and start caramelizing those onions. So I do go ahead and slice up 2 Vidalia onions and just really simple slicing. You're going to puree everything in the end anyway, so it doesn't really matter how you really slice anything in this. Nothing's going to have to look pretty or anything like that. So then I go ahead and heat up what I'm going to be using in the end for this soup, which is my Dutch oven pot is what I'm using today. So I went ahead and used this. I put a little bit of olive oil in there, threw in my onions and sauteed them up to where they were looking caramelized. Then I added just a little bit. I don't even have the measurements for this because I just kind of guessed with it, but I just kind of pour in enough chicken broth to where it coats the bottom, but it's not like filled up because you kind of want it to go down. And then I added about 2 tablespoonfuls of flour. And by tablespoons, I literally just took an actual spoon, you will see in the video, and sprinkled that throughout it, mixed it up, and it was literally perfect. I put the lid on it and set it aside for later because after that, you pretty much just have to wait for your tomatoes to get done. Once your tomatoes are done at about the 45-minute mark, you can go ahead and let them sit and cool down for a little bit. Once they are cool, 5 to 10 minutes, I get out my Ninja food processor. I have the smaller one. I really need to invest in a bigger one, especially if I keep doing these cooking videos. But as of now, it's never really bothered me, so I keep using it. But you can use any food processor, blender, whatever you would like. But I go ahead, since mine's smaller, I have to make batches. So I'll mix in a little bit of the onions, a little bit of the tomato and garlic mix, and I'll puree that. And then I will add it into the big pot that my onions are in. So usually I have all of my onions pureed in my first go since I'm gonna be using that big pot. Once it's all done, I go ahead and dump every single bit of it into the big pot and go ahead and get it on the stove. At this point, I put it on about medium heat, add some salt and pepper to it just to kind of get the flavors cooking. At this point, I also go ahead and add in my chicken broth. I use chicken broth. Like I said, you can use vegetable. And I usually add in anywhere from a cup to 2 cups, depending on what mood I'm in. The more you add, the thinner your soup is going to be. So if you want a thicker consistency, you won't want to add that much. The last thing that I do before letting it simmer is add my basil. And I go heavy with my basil. I actually just have like this little seasoning of basil. This is just dried basil leaves. You can get fresh basil. It's a lot better. I recommend it, honestly, but this is all I had on me today. So I will be using this, but I will still be going pretty heavy with this, sprinkling it all in there. If you have fresh basil leaves, I usually do about half a cup, like a lot. And then I go ahead and add my half and half. And again, this is just like the broth. You can do as much as you want. It depends on how creamy you want your soup to be. You can kind of get a better idea by looking at the video. I will try to measure out how much half and half I add today to put in my blog for you guys. My tomatoes are actually still roasting as I am filming this part of it, so I still have the rest to record, but I will try to measure out exactly how much I use. But you guys can kind of tell from the clip you see of me pouring it in, but it honestly is just preference with the chicken, veggie broth, and the heavy cream. Just know that the more broth you add, the thinner your soup's going to be. The more heavy cream or half and half you add, the more creamier your soup is going to be. From there, I let mine simmer for about 10 to 20 minutes, and while it's simmering, that is when I go ahead and start grilled cheeses if that's what we're going to eat with this, or anything like that. With light soups like this, my husband's family introduced me to light soups with wraps, and I really like that. Just some cream cheese and turkey and some veggies and stuff like that. Cold wraps. It's amazing in the summertime with a light soup and a wrap, but that's a really good option. And you can also get some like garnish stuff out. You can put some more basils on top to garnish in your bowls. You can also add a little bit of like Parmesan cheese or something like that just to garnish your bowl, make it look a little bit nicer. But in the end, this is such a nice warm and cozy soup. We love it, especially when it's warm outside. Tomato soup just sounds amazing, and I love that it's completely homemade. It's not from canned product or anything like that. And like I said, it is so much better with fresh tomatoes. Oh my gosh. But that is pretty much for this recipe. Again, you can go check out the blog to screenshot your ingredient list and just some basic steps. I will try to add as much info as I can there, or if I forgot anything in this video, I will add it there as well. I hope you guys like my Cook With Me videos. I really enjoy cooking, so why not film it and bring you guys along with me? And if you try this recipe, make sure you let me know. You can comment down below, or you can go check out my Instagram. My personal account is @AllisonHunt_2. I'll throw it up on the screen. You can check it out, and when this video goes up, I will more than likely be posting a picture to go along with it there, and you can comment underneath there as well. Or even message me if you would prefer to do so. But I hope you guys enjoyed. Thank you so much if you took the time to watch this or even create this meal. It is delish, and I will see you guys in my next lifestyle video.